Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up after the previous episode, and Reddington's explaining this whole Blacklist situation. He's like, yeah, this isn't literally the Blacklist, but basically it's the focal point where there are 17 outposts scattered around the world gathering intelligence. It all comes to this one particular spot. All of it gets like siphoned through and like looked through, and that information gets sent to him. So he's the one that Reddington's more so like the Blacklist is kind of in his head because he like takes the information and it's like, all right, and this person, so I mean, it's really like an amalgamation of like a lot of things. I thought, technically speaking, it would literally be the Blacklist. I thought, like, all the intelligence that was gathering would, like, I thought maybe, like, the Blacklist was technically stored here. And I guess to a weird technical extent, it kind of was. Basically, it's like, wait, the whole Blacklist is analog? Its whole operation's analog? It's like, oh, no, there's computers with all of this out there, but I'm paranoid. I get a little jittery about digital footprints. So at the very least, at this core center, they make me feel a little bit better by pretending like it's all analog when in actuality isn't. I mean, it's understandable. Like, analog's a lot harder to track down. Like, tracking down like a physical paper alone is a lot more of a hassle than like something digital, because digital can be hacked and can be trailed. So so obviously Reddington's like, oh, basically I wanted you to know the ins and outs and everything because eventually this is going to be yours. But it's like, no, I don't want it to be. Like, you're saying that my mom was okay with this, but you ended up killing her. And it's like, Liz, stop. And it's like, it's time for you to know this story. And I thought it was so interesting how they framed it too, because like, obviously for her, like, time is slowing down around her. Obviously everything turning black and white. And we finally get the truth piece by piece. And it's actually really incredible. Like, obviously we're connecting everything over the course of the series. What we've learned, what we thought we knew, what we actually didn't know, filling in some blanks, some things that didn't make sense. Just piece by piece, kind of understanding everything. It is kind of sad at the end of the day. Like, we kind of get Katarina's perspective. For her, it's like, I was, born into this world. Like, I didn't want to become the spy I became, but it was kind of in my blood. I was the son my dad always wanted, and I was kind of from a young age put to work, gathering intelligence and stuff like that. So it's like there was no escape in this world. My mother wanted more for me, but my dad had other plans, And so when everything's ultimately playing out, we find out about Ivan Stopanov was her handler, so that's the connection there. But obviously, the whole situation of her meeting Reddington, it's like, the directorate was like, oh, we can, the Fifth Directorate, I believe, wasn't what I was saying, was basically like, oh, we can use Reddington for intelligence. So she implanted herself in his life, and that ended up being a sad, complicated thing, too, because it's like, right, he was already married, he already had a kid, but then, like, when things got serious, because Katarina got pregnant, and it was actually her dad, sadly, that was kind of like, you could use this to your advantage. At the very least, having this kid actually works out, which is so interesting because he came off to be the doting grandfather, but in actuality, like, he's kind of scummy in the beginning because it's just like, right, he like, Masha was just a means to an end, because it's like, right, you being pregnant with his child means you get to keep Reddington so close that you continue pumping him for information for us. But then also like, well, what about the whole Constantine situation? Why Constantine believed, because I actually forgot about that. Like, cause we haven't heard from Constantine in like forever, like that. I forgot about that because I was like, right, because it just clicked in my head. I was like, Constantine. I was like, right. The actor who played Kai Proctor in Banshee, like he was Constantine. But we also know now why Constantine believed Liz to actually be his daughter and not Reddington, because it was part of the lie. This way you get to keep your husband. And I mean, to be fair, it's also like she didn't love Constantine. It was just kind of another, like, a lot of stuff in her life was like her dad. Is actually kind of sad, like, and he kind of helped turn her life into what it was, sadly. Like, her life was a lie. Like, what was the truth anymore? She was lying to her husband. She was lying to Reddington. Like, she had lost herself. That's a kind of sad aspect of being kind of pseudo, like, undercover slash a spy. Especially because they also reminded us, right, she was with the Cabal too, so she was literally lying to everyone. It's like, who was Katarina Rostova at the end of the day? No one knew. People thought they knew who she really was. They didn't. They were all just, pawns in this game that she was mixed up in. Is it a game that she was playing? No, she was just another piece in this, chess game, sadly. But Reddington was so caught up in everything, he was even willing to leave his own wife to be with her, which Katarina was like, I don't want to be the reason why your family got destroyed. And I'm wondering, was that from a place of sincerity, or was she saying that to lure him in more? I don't know. But it's when it's all said and done, like, he kind of started piecing it together. Wait, she's, eventually he's like, oh, I thought she was just spying for the KGB, but then he finds out, no, she's not just spying on the Americans, she's spying on the KGB. He's the one that stumbled across, obviously, the conspiracy, and it's like, oh, like, he's the one that he stayed with her those next 2 years to gather, like, everything, and obviously that's where the Fulcrum comes in. But like I said, it's like, dude, we're connecting every single dot of explaining, like, how we got to where we are. But obviously for Katarina, it's like she needed the Fulcrum because she can't let the Cabal, because it was her fault that things went down this way. So she knew, like, if I don't get the Fulcrum, the Cabal is not only going to come after me, they're going to come after my daughter because I failed. It's my fault that the Fulcrum became a thing, Reddington gathering all this intelligence. So he had actually taken Liz, and he was going to try and expose everything, because I guess he was already neck deep in everything, and he had said, like, rather than telling his superior officers, like, he wanted to have evidence first, because if he brought this to their attention without the proper evidence, he would have come off looking bad. So in order to protect himself, self-preservation, he would, who knows if that was the right move. I think in the long run it was, because he probably would have been screwed if he had actually come forward at that time. Who knows? I mean, he probably didn't know who to trust without someone, like, reporting him, so. But Katarina tracked him down at the beach house, and so, brought, Kozlov with her as well. And obviously, we finally get the full context of the night, Liz shot her dad, what was going on. The sad thing is he was trying to do the right thing, and Katarina's kind of threatening him and being like, oh, we've already framed you. Like, I don't know whether it was a thing of she was trying to get him to back off. It's like, we've framed you, we've done all this, especially because, like, after Liz shot him, she could have easily just left him. Well, multiple things. One, he knew where the Fulcrum is, so you couldn't just let him die. Two, I think on some, I don't know. I don't know if you can necessarily say she ever loved Reddington. He was just a mark. So there was probably, like, no real love lost, but it was a thing of this relationship gave her something that she does love more than anything in the world, and that's Liz, Masha. So it's like, so part of me was almost thinking, like, well, she was sympathetic enough to try and save his life. I mean, also because saving his life would also mean Liz wouldn't have to live with the knowledge of she killed her father. So it's a combination of everything. I don't think it was just one reason. I think it was all three reasons why she decided to try and save Reddington. For necessity, the Fulcrum, because sympathy, because it's like, right, I don't want my daughter to know that she's responsible for his death, but, like, but also tying it is self-preservation, because if I don't get the Fulcrum, I'm dead, and most likely Masha's dead, so I'm trying to save all of us, so, but, obviously, like, they started already laying the groundwork. Obviously, it's like, because Liz went back into the fire to get her bunny, and it's like, hey, you were there, you got burned, and so did you. We'll quickly skip over that, because there are points where, like, Liz is kind of coming out of the story, and then Reddington's like, no, Liz, stay with the story, focus on the story. And kind of, every piece to everything starts coming together, because it's like, Ilyov's, there, and it's like, wait, you're not the real Reddington. It's like, right, everything Dom told you, some of it was a lie. Most of it was true, though. Obviously, Reddington was dead, and to protect you, we resurrected a dead man, because no intelligence agency knew he was dead, so we used that to our advantage. Ilyov was the one that went there at the banks withdrawing the money, but he only pretended to be Reddington for a couple days. And eventually, Dom got mixed up in all of this, and Dom's the one that came up with the plan. Because we end up finding out, because it's like, right, because it was the thing that confused me so much last episode. I'm like, whoa. If this whole thing was Katarina's blessings, then why did Katarina want to know about the archive and everything, considering the archive was the centerfold of the Blacklist? It's like, that didn't make any sense. Because then I start being like, oh, maybe someone had hit me up like recently about this season, being like, maybe Katarina wasn't actually, I mean, and I think that's something other people have actually said too, like at least even just in comments alone on some of our reviews, were like, maybe the Katarina we met isn't actually Katarina. And it turns out she's not. She's someone named Tatiana. I'm probably butchering it, because I believe it is Tatiana. It's like, because if she was the real Katarina Rostova, she would have known, for one, who the real Reddington is. So why would I go through all the trouble of trying to expose you, trying to get that information from Iliov? So it's like, it kind of starts filling in a lot of the things of like, right, like, at the time, you kind of, at least I did, I'm sure other people are like, oh, that's not making, but then the argument could be like, whoa, Dom lied about Iliov being Reddington, so, making it seem like, it kind of made you at the time think that maybe Katarina's part in the story was a lie too. Once again, most of it was true, except the only thing that was a lie was Iliov being the one that became Reddington. But that's the sad thing, because she, Tatiana knew Iliov because it's like they had worked on missions together. She's like, I thought he was a friend. And the moment we start piecing it together, right, that's where this comes into play. The fact is that they set her up to take because Dom wanted to protect his daughter. He's like, he doesn't regret doing what he did because everything he did was for the purpose of protecting his daughter, protecting his grandchild. So he let this innocent woman take the fall. Basically, Katarina was a bit of a ghost, so unless you knew what she looked like, no one knew what she looked like. So Iliov, Dom, and Ivan are the only ones who knew what she actually looked like. So Tatiana ended up taking the fall. So the story she told last season in season 7 about the person she cared about dying wasn't a lie. That was actually true. But who she was, it's like, no. Like, her husband died. It's not what Dom nor Iliov planned, because they didn't know he would be there. They just wanted her to die. They wanted the KGB and everyone to witness Katarina Rostova dying, and that way people will stop looking for the real Katarina if everyone thought she was dead, and it worked. Granted, Katarina didn't die, only her husband did. And then in that moment, you're like, okay, so that explains everything, why you came out of the woodwork. But even I was like, it took you this long, especially when she was explaining. Reddington came to me years later after finding out what Dom and Iliov had done and was like so upset, felt so guilt-ridden that Reddington protected me, gave me the money necessary for me to disappear and stay hidden. But like, obviously Tatiana resurfaced when she found out, wait, because Liz was asking too many questions, and she threw it out there that maybe Katarina Rostova was still alive. Because now Tatiana knows, like, wait, you didn't just hide me. You know where Katarina is. The woman who basically ruined my life, because the people she cares about led to my life getting upheavaled. I lost the man I love, but not just that, I lost my entire identity. For her, like the archive, all of it could have been the means necessary to restore her identity. She would no longer have to be on the run that she had been in hiding for decades. I could finally be myself again. I can reclaim who I was after all these years. So that's what set her off on the path, like at the end of season 6, but also like what set her, like, everything in motion in season 7. So she needed to get the information from Reddington, and she had to go to the one person that was close to Reddington, and no one was closer than Liz. And so it also makes sense too, because constantly throughout the season, Reddington was like, you think that person's your, like, he was kind of like, that's not your mom or something. Like, the fact is, but the argument could be like, oh, you didn't want me to know, like, what was going on. Like, that was Liz's justification. That was a lot of people's justification behind, like, why he never was like, yeah, like, anytime it's like, Dad, that's my mom, it's like, if you think so, yeah, so on and so forth. So it's just like, it started, filling in a lot of blanks. It's one of those things. It's a weird reference to make, but it's kind of like what WandaVision did for Age of Ultron, where it adds like a different perspective on things. Like you saw things one way, Wanda saw things one way from her upbringing, and now in retrospect with the new knowledge of WandaVision, we now have a new perspective. So it's not necessarily retconning, it's just adding new information to a complicated situation where like you thought things were one way, now you add context to kind of make you go, oh, it was actually this the entire time. It's one of those things like maybe you could make the argument that's still technically a retcon. I don't know what you call that. I just treat it as like it's a new perspective on things, a new lens to view things through, and that's what we got. And you can kind of understand like why she would do what she did. You know, it's kind of sad that she manipulated a girl's love for her mom, her need to have her mom again, to get what she needed. But it was just like, I've spent too long not being able to have myself, and knowing like, you know, like she was hoping, you know, that she could get her life back. And it's like, so that's the sad thing is of this thing. And that's what makes this even a little more heartbreaking. It's like everything, I mean, they've made it clear for a long time. And I think Liz always never really fully believed it, but in actuality, it has always been true. And that's something I've said. I don't think Reddington's ever lied to her. I've said it time and time again. I think he's admitted certain truths, which for some people, that is a lie, but I think he's never outright 100% lied to her. Once again, you can, I'm sure there's some, I've brought up before, like, I'm sure there's some examples of where you can kind of be like, oh, there's this, and then blah, 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 so on and so forth, but he's always made it clear everything he's ever done has been for her. Coming into her life has always been for the purpose of protecting her. That everything he's built has been for the purpose of protecting her. So, but it's like so many people had to suffer because of this. You know, Sam had to die to keep this secret. Tom ended up dying because of this secret. Kate ended up dying because of this secret. I mean, Townsend ended up being responsible for Jennifer dying. So, like, so much death, so many people in her life ended up dying because of this very secret. And it's especially because it's like, all of it was for you. That has to, like, hit you a certain way, too, of being like, technically, all this fallout is because of me. Like, the people I care about were all endangered. Like, so many lives lost and upheavaled because of me. My mom's attempt to protect me. Like, everyone's attempt to protect me, my family's attempt to protect me. It's kind of, you know, sad in the long run. But that's why, like, Tatiana had to die, because she would have exposed where the real Katarina was after, you know, because Dom ended up telling her the truth, and then Yvonne ended up telling Townsend the truth. So it's like, right, these people have to be removed from the board, because it's not just Townsend. There's a lot of people that would come after Liz. You know, it's not, Townsend isn't just the greatest threat. Like, there are other threats out there that this whole secret could draw to her doorstep, to her and Agnes. So because obviously for Liz, it's like, I don't care about the why, but it's like, before Katarina could really get to it, it's like, no, what you need to understand the why before we get to the who, you know. And it's like, fine, I get the why, everything was to protect me. Once again, like, that's a heavy burden to put on her shoulders. I mean, I guess the truth was, you were never meant to find out. That's another reason why, because it's like, right, if you ever found out the truth about everything, you would be so guilt-ridden yourself about so much was done to protect you. So much destruction came about to protect you. So like, I think that's why Reddington always made sure that Liz never found out the truth, because I think that's a heavy burden to bear, like, on your own consciousness of like, right, I'm kind of responsible for a lot. I wanted to blame Reddington for everything, but it's like, well, Reddington's at fault in certain regards, but also it's like, right, I'm, you know, because I set a lot of this in motion, because Tatiana came out of hiding because I'm the one that came looking for my mom. I'm the one that put it out there that, hey, maybe my mom's still alive, and I set so much of this in motion. It's like, if I had done what Reddington has said of, like, not looking into things, but it's also the fact is she deserves answers. This is everything related to her mother. She's grown up her entire life, like, so much being kept from her. It's like, this is her story. She has the right to know the truth no matter what. And if Reddington had been clear from the beginning, who knows where this all could have, you know, gone. Because for Liz, it's like, no matter what the reasoning, like, you still abandoned me. You left me alone. Like, you wanted to protect me or whatever, but you still weren't there for me, you know? And And the look on Katarina's face, and especially Liz being like, I want to know who Reddington is. You're the only person who really knows the truth. And, you know, so, but before it could happen, Townsend found them. And luckily, well, sadly, Liz ends up getting shot. But, you know, Townsend has the gun pointed and it's like, okay, everything's ready. I'm about to, like, end this all. And so Reddington is pleading. It's like, okay, I will give you all of this. Like, this is the Blacklist. This is everything. You can have all this power and everything. Just let her live. Like, I will give you everything. And for Townsend, is like, right, now that I know the truth about you, it makes sense. Like, doing so much, all of this, decades of building this criminal empire, you know, led to all this, like, for her sake. And you, like, oh, like, who would love someone that much to do it? And I was like, right, the pieces start kind of coming together at that point. But then, like, at the end, you know, Liz ended up shooting Townsend. Dembe got the upper hand, so they were able to kind of escape down to that bunker. And Reddington's kind of on, you know, the speaker being like, I'm sorry. I was young and careless with, like, the information I saw back in those packets. And, yes, I didn't kill your family directly, but I can understand why you would feel I am still somewhat responsible. Because, sadly, Reddington is kind of responsible in many regards of why a lot of stuff happened. It's like what happened to Tatiana. It's kind of on Reddington. That's why, like, I wanted to make sure she was okay and taken care of and kept her hidden. But also what happened to Townsend. And it's like, oh, well, deathbed confession, right, you're biting, but that's not going to stay your execution, essentially. And it's like, oh, well, that you already had a bite at that apple, but that's no longer an option. Thanks to Liz, ironically. It's like my dedication kind of ultimately ended up being my salvation in that regard. So, but he brings up the fact is like, right, this place can maintain a lot of damage, like certain amount of, like, bombs couldn't even break this place. It was like, well, not the entire facility, just this particular bunker in particular. So it's like, all right, getting in here is not going to be as easy as you think. And starts filling it with, like, this specific chloroform or whatever. And is willing, it's like, yeah, it's super flammable. And Townsend's like, you wouldn't dare. You did end up destroying the key to everything that you've ever, built. And for Reddington, it's like, I don't need it. My key is right here. And Liz isn't going to be done in by the likes of you. And the room gets lit up, you know? So, destroyed the heart of what is the Blacklist. And it's like, well, to be fair, yes, this was the epicenter, but he made it clear. Like, there are outposts all over the place. There could always be a new, like, seed, a new heart to all of this being rebuilt and everything. So, but we didn't get the answer necessarily outright, but I think with all the context that's kind of been thrown out there this episode, I think it's clear. They made it as clear as possible. Like, they're not going, like, Liz isn't going to know definitively. We aren't going to know definitively until next episode, but I think it's clear that someone, like I said, someone gets it, like, years ago. Like, I'm sure, like, the fan theories have always kind of done that, but, like, I just in my own circle, in my own world of, like, I remember making a video about, like, the Bones identity and stuff like that and who Reddington really is. And I remember, I mean, maybe those comments are still there, but, like, I think someone all those years ago was like, oh, I think Katarina is Reddington. You know, I think, like I said, I think someone most recently was kind of saying that too. So I'd thrown out there in his recent, some more recent reviews of, like, yes, someone had suggested that years ago that Katarina had a sex change and became Raymond Reddington, because the clues are, like, Dom told the story of Ilioff because he couldn't accept the truth. Like, it also explains why he has such disdain for Reddington, because it's like, right, my daughter is gone. My daughter died to become you. You reinvented yourself. Even made it clear, like, right, because Reddington, everyone was under the impression that Reddington had gotten surgery. So, like, Reddington coming back not looking exactly like himself as he was previously, no one's going to ask any questions because they assumed he got plastic surgery to hide his real identity. So that was a cover-up, so it didn't need to be an exact double. So that's where Katarina comes into play. But also, Liz said it herself, wait, you were in the fire too. That explains where this, well, I guess, like, this, that's where the scars came from on Reddington's back. because I'm sure like that was as much that could be recovered as possible. Also, because it also fills in that was an episode. That was back in season 3 when Reddington thought Liz was dead. That at the little beach house episode where he kept seeing some young woman and was trying to protect, and we ended up finding out at the end of the episode that was Katarina. So now it adds context to that scene of like, right, that was her having been tracked down, because she at that time she had hidden herself, but like some people had found her at that time because like everyone was hunting her and everything. So, and now it kind of adds more context to like that episode where Reddington was killing everybody, and it's like, no, like obviously it's like, oh, Katarina was technically there, and it's like, right, even going to the waters where she kind of walked into the sea and died. It's like at that moment Reddington, or rather Katarina, was kind of looking back on her life of who she was. Like, you know, in that moment, it's like her daughter was dead. It's like everything I've ever done, like the most important thing and person in this world to me is gone. The reason I did all of this in the first place is gone, you know? So it kind of got her flashing back a little bit to who she was. I guess it'd been so long, it's like, right, you know, I didn't even realize, it's like, right, it's been so long I don't even remember my own face type of thing, maybe. I don't know. But also, it's like, Katarina also made it clear, like, I would never, like, I made sure to keep an eye on you, even if it was from a distance. Her perspective was like, oh, like, you did that through, this Reddington, like, this whoever it is, but even said it herself, like, we created Reddington. What's also interesting, too, is there is also the conversation about the lady that's been taking care of Agnes. It's like, who is she really? It's like, because Liz got her contact through, like, is that a contact and friend from the real Katarina? Or is that a contact through Tatiana? So she's playing the role like, oh, like, I'll help you and everything. Like, I don't know if that's... I get the feeling like that's going to come back because, like, wait, she has Agnes, she's looking after Agnes, right? So that's actually a bad thing. Because the same person was kind of like, I don't think the person pretending to be Katarina is actually Katarina, was kind of like, I don't trust this. But like, that's why I'm like, maybe they were right too, not to trust her, because it's like, what's her role going to be of being like, right now that we're on the road to figuring out the truth that, hey, oh, at least right now Liz knows the truth of Tatiana wasn't her mom. So it begs the question of like, right, who did you leave your daughter with? Like, is that someone that you can really trust? Or like I said, is that someone the real Katarina knew that you ended up getting that, you know? But it's like, I'm under the impression she got the name and stuff like that from Tatiana, so that's someone she knew and was close with. So because she was hoping to probably potentially, it's probably like, no, like, Reddington killed my friend, so she was probably going to be okay with, like, Liz killing Reddington and destroying him, because it's like, right, that's revenge for my friend, potentially. So, I don't know. That's a lot of stuff. But the whole tangent I went on, what's the whole point was, Katarina would never leave your protection to anyone else. It's like, to be as dedicated to Liz, it's like, you're not even family. It's like, you're supposed to be potentially some stranger. Like, why would you, even Reddington admitting, I was there that night of the fire when your dad died. It's like, you know, and her tearing up because it's like, because she doesn't want you to know, because it's like, who she was as Katarina Rostova is dead. Like, you know, so your mom is gone, and you're kind of better off thinking that. You know, even the line last episode being like, oh, it's ironic that you're the good mother that you are considering your mom. So saying that as herself, because it's like, right, my entire life, everything I did, I wasn't a good mother to you. Like, I put you in this life to begin with, like, me becoming who I was. Once again, the argument could be this all started with Dom, so it kind of does fall on him. Like, he kind of has to fall on a sword. He's no longer alive, obviously, but it's like, the sword kind of like, the buck kind of stops, or maybe not necessarily stops, but at least starts with him, you know? So, I think that's where we're currently at with, like, yeah, Katarina is Reddington. I'm legitimately curious how some people are going to feel about that. I'm totally fine with it. Like, once again, I was thinking, I mean, once again, that someone had thrown out that theory to me years ago, and I'm like, I wasn't quite sure behind it, but I'm like, oh, it seems like it looks like it. Once again, not unless the season finale's like, nah, it's not what you think it is either. But I'm like everything in this episode's hinting towards. I mean, there's been clues the entire time, but now it kind of makes a lot more sense because it's like, right. Which also begs the question: is that why Kate did everything she did too? Because like the whole point was to expose Reddington to be like, oh, you're not going to tell your daughter who you really are? Or I would think Kate didn't know. Or maybe it's a situation of like, all she knew was you weren't the real Reddington. Because that is also the thing of like, right, the Kate inside of her head. I mean, obviously that was a manifestation, but it's just kind of ironic that if Kate, because Kate cared a lot about Katarina so to be like the Kate inside of Liz's head being all about killing Reddington and not like backing down at the last second and everything. I think that has to kind of be considered with all of it, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, that's why I'm like, because I was like, Kate was like your insider, knew where all the bodies were buried, so it's like knew where the real Reddington's body was exposing you, but it's because like, did she actually not know where the real Katarina? Maybe she thought by exposing you for who you were, like all your lies and everything, that Liz would be better off. It's like, the argument could be no, you set so much in motion by doing that. I mean, granted, Reddington did try and kill you, but that's because you knew too much, and it's like you proved that you couldn't be trustworthy anymore, so it's like you kind of had to go, so regardless, like I said, I'm kind of going on a huge tangent about all this, but like I said, my whole question is like, I'm curious like how people are going to feel about this potential. Like I said, I'm feeling like this is like a sure thing to a certain extent, but like I said, the season finale, which is the next episode, could end up being like, nah, that's not the case. I doubt that, but you know, there's still room for them to be like, no, that's not what it is either. I think it is, but we'll have to see. All I saw was like, yep, next episode's the season finale. That's all I needed. I didn't see a peek of next episode, and I'm not going to. I don't want to see. I don't want to even get a like. I don't even want to see a thumbnail of a YouTube video about it. I have legitimately no idea what to really expect from the season finale and where this season's going to wrap up. Because Townsend's gone now. Liz knows 90% of the truth. So that last 10%'s got to obviously come out. But where that's all going to go, there's some information I stumbled across this episode. I won't go into it. I highly recommend, if you're curious, like, I don't even want to, because I don't know what the context of it is, so I'm not going to say anything about it, because it might influence, like, wait, what does that mean for the show? So I'm not going to. But if you're curious, there's some information that came. Like I said, I stumbled across one thing that said this. It was like a YouTube video. I don't know. So if you're curious about like, oh, what am I referencing? Just look into it yourself. There's probably some Blacklist news out there about this, but I don't know what it means, and I'd rather not throw it out there. So if you don't want to know, it could be a little spoilery about potentially where things are going, especially because it could have a huge implication for the Blacklist going forward. Like I said, I have no context for it. I just saw a thumbnail and a title of a video regarding it, and I didn't look into it any further because I kind of didn't want to know, because I hadn't even watched this week's episode yet. So, regardless, tangents and all that aside, I'm, like I said, very excited to see where the season finale takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.